Now we're rolling. So we have like a 10-second roll in, and we're gonna have to deal with that Miata in front because that's just gonna be obnoxious. That is just that's a little much. Welcome back to the Evan and TJ podcast, Calvin. Calvin's not here today, so we are happily subbing Calvin for Evan. If you don't know Evan, he's one of our good friends, and he is soon to move out here and hang out with us. But I'll link his channel down below. Thank you so much for subbing, and welcome to the podcast, Evan. This is your second appearance. You are our first double timer.
Dude, and I replaced Calvin, so
that's pretty huge.
A big deal.
Before we jump into today's podcast, I want to thank our sponsor, Tuner Crate. Tuner Crate is a monthly subscription service where they have different themed boxes every month, and they send you cool, rad stuff. I think this month's is Dom Toretto, so it's a bunch of like Fast and Furious themed stuff, and you send you a bunch of cool stuff, hats, shirts, and there's different pricings on different boxes. You can get the small box, medium, and large box. It's pretty mad. Links will be down below. Also, I want to thank Movement Watches as our sponsor. As you can see here, Evan is currently rocking a Movement watch. You can use the code TJ10.
What are you doing in there?
And I didn't want to work today because I was working on the car, so I didn't wear it, but thank you to our sponsor. Thank you to our sponsors. Moving on. So today's topic is super last minute. And first, I want to apologize for our day late upload. Normally we do every Sunday, but it being Easter and the week kind of just got us tangled, we weren't able to make it happen. So I apologize for that, bros.
Did we actually decide on the topic? Like, is that what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, I think that's pretty
literally
solid.
Just 30 seconds ago, pretty much. Not really 30 seconds, but we just figured this out.
It was pretty close. So, we're going to have some disturbances, too, because people are coming in the warehouse today. So if you see us talking off camera, we are sorry. But today's podcast is how to get in. I want to talk about how to get into drifting and how to get your car ready. But, Evan, you've done more autocross stuff. But it's kind of how to get yourself into the scene, the right steps to take, what's your budget, is it possible in your area? If it isn't possible in your area, is it worth doing it on the streets? And different cars to get into it, because I think there's a bunch of different directions. And I know you can speak with this as well, not doing it yourself and kind of like, or not going into it with help from others and kind of figuring out for yourself is intimidating and hard. And you don't really know where to start, which is always like a very intimidating thing. So, Evan, why don't you give your background on things that you've done? Because I know you guys know my background with everything. But if they don't know who you are, explain your background with automotive driving and automotive driving.
I grew up racing dirt bikes. Just long story short, I grew up racing dirt bikes most of my life, but I always enjoyed cars. But now I've kind of waited pretty much all through college to start actually doing like track days and autocross days and stuff like that. So I have my Miata. I have a 1994 Miata that I've kind of spec'd out to do track events and autocross and stuff like that. But it's not like I don't have the most experience in the world. I have a pretty decent amount of experience, but I have enough to kind of shed light on, especially what it's like to start. But I have some HPD stuff under my skin. I have one. I don't know if I'd call that a drift day. What happened the other day? But I've tried drifting.
You could,
now.
but
I'm not gonna say that I've done drifting yet. I'm building a drift car at the moment, but I have not done drifting yet. But I can speak to at least like the safety aspects. And I can speak to most of the topics that we're going to be talking about. But
absolutely. I mean, I don't know. There's no definition of what is a true drift day or whatnot. But you've been on the track. You've attempted it. You learned.
I got into a Mad Max G35 and clutch kicked a few times.
Well, shout out to BS Build. He was going to be on the podcast, but we couldn't make it happen. So, Chris, BS Build, the next time you are in town, we will make it happen. I promise. It actually might be next week, so that should be pretty.
Again, really?
Yeah, that should be pretty entertaining.
Nice.
So I want to first discuss here the first steps on getting into everything. Is that Danny?
Danny.
It is Danny. Hi, Danny. Danny Courtney. What? No, you're good.
Dude, you're good.
We're out here just rolling.
I invited you.
I think that first of all, getting into the scene is intimidating. If you don't, Danny, come say what's up to the podcast. Podcast fam.
Hey, Pod Squad.
I think getting into drifting is extremely intimidating if you don't know what you're doing. When I first got into it, the first things I did was obviously got a 350 for the drift scene, but I welded it. I think the first time I went out stock.
You had the open diff first time.
I had an open diff, and it doesn't work at all. I maybe learned some driving skills. I didn't really take much away from it. The next time I went out, I think I had a welded diff, which, first of all, if you want to get started, I think all you need technically is a welded diff in a car that has enough power. A lot of people don't know where to start with that type of stuff. You obviously want a rear-wheel drive car, but welded diff was a good way for me to learn car control and how to clutch
kick.
You don't
need power. A lot of people think, like, I want to kind of address that too. A lot of people think that real race cars have power. And it's most of the drifters that that I know, everybody starts off at a low power car so you can learn car control. And it's the same way for even high performance driving stuff. I have a Miata because I want to learn the basics of driving. Most people that drive race cars, most people that literally drive professionally, started off in stock power Miatas.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So just to kind of add, power is not a necessity.
Yeah. You don't need. I mean, if you have a stock Miata, you might need a little more power, but you don't need anything crazy.
To do autocross and stuff.
Yeah.
Not necessarily drifting.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't need anything crazy. I mean, that's why I'm still in stock. And also, too, we're not speaking from a professional standpoint. We're speaking from our experience, which is more than someone who has never had any.
Yeah.
So we're speaking from what we've learned over the past year. Just to kind of shed some light on to help the next person get into it, because if I would have gotten this information, a year ago before I got into it would have made my life a lot easier. But I think the basic necessities you need is just a welded diff, which if you don't know what that means, it just means you pretty much are making your wheels spin on the same rotation. They don't do any kind of clockwise thing, so that just allows the back to lock up and you to chain. But I learned a lot of my technique, I guess, and understanding what your car is capable of doing before you crash, which is essential. So welded diff is something you definitely want to do. And I think that was one thing. There's a lot of debate whether, is it crazy to daily a welded diff and all that type of stuff. And I personally think the answer is no. It's not at all.
Depends on your area, though. If you have a cold area or if it's really rainy all the time, I don't recommend. It can get dangerous, especially depending on your tire that you have. There's a lot of variables, but I don't recommend welding the diff in a daily car. If that's your only car, I wouldn't really encourage that.
Yeah, see, so I'm on the other side of the boat where if it is your daily car and you want to drift it, then weld it. But what you said earlier, location comes down to it. Being in California and being spoiled with weather, we don't really get rain. And I guess I never learned about that aspect of it being sketchy driving in rain.
Yeah.
Which if you're in a different area like Evan and it rains a lot, I
had a kid that had a welded diff Miata that came down to one of my meets one time, and it was raining that morning, and he was like, dude, it was so sketchy, I almost lost it 4 times coming here. I'm like, dude, why did you drive? Safety first, dude. But it can get sketchy, especially high speeds on highways and stuff like that. It can get pretty bad, but just something to note.
Yeah, see, that was something I never even knew about. Because here no one's ever mentioned anything about it, but it's that's a big help having a welded diff. And I also want to say, the more cars you drive, I usually think that helps a lot more. Whether it just being your own car, but getting different feeling in a different car. How do I explain it? Trying to drift Calvin's Miata versus trying to drift my 350 towards trying to drift Zach's 350.
There's a lot of value to getting many different types of feedback.
Get as much feeling as you can for a bunch of different cars, because it allows you to kind of spread your knowledge and allows you to learn how to handle the vehicle, not just handle your own. And
also ride-alongs, especially for a lot of beginners who've really never done anything. I don't know if you've ever ridden along with anybody in a car. For whether it's track day stuff or whether it's drifting stuff, it can really help just getting in the car and seeing what they're doing and feeling what they're doing as well.
Yeah, that was the first thing I did. Was every event I went to, when I usually was fortunate enough to know or to learn people or meet people who were the ride-along drivers who were there to drive and gave ride-alongs, and I was introduced to them, and then they actually took my car out for me at Adams Motorsport Park where I normally go, and they would just rip it. And I would tell them, do as many laps as you want. Just I just want to watch. And I think that is a huge advantage if you can have someone who obviously knows more than you drive your car. And because it for me, there was a lot of corners and turns and slides that they did. I was like, if that was me driving, I would have backed off throttle. I would have counter corrected rubber, and they push through it and show you new things. You're like, oh wow, I was doing that completely wrong. It's weird until you see it, and it's a completely different viewpoint, which is a lot more valuable than I think a lot of people realize.
I think it's hard to do it for some people. Like for me, the first time somebody said, "Oh, you should get a ride along," I was like, "Dude, no! Like I want to drive." Drive myself.
Yeah. I mean,
it was weird because it's kind of a pride thing. It's like, oh no, I want to show these guys that I know what to do. It's humble yourself down a little bit and just let the person who's done it a lot of times show you what to do because it's extremely valuable. It's extremely valuable.
And also one thing too, that I think, and this is assuming that you have been doing it for a while or like you're actually going to pursue it or whatnot. But for drifting especially, one thing that, and I still don't understand this to this day, everyone told me, do not get an angle kit. Do not get an angle kit. I even had people commenting that on my YouTube who like did drifting and they were like, you don't want, I talked about how I wanted an angle kit and they were like, that's dumb. That's going to like be a crutch on your learning. And I, at that point and still to this point was like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. Like, why would you tell me not to get an angle kit? Like, when you get into drifting and you start doing it, or for those who have the knowledge, or if you don't have the knowledge, when you go into a slide and you have your wheel locked, you can't hold it too far, too fast with your stock steering angle because you will pretty much just like slingshot your car in like just lose your drift. You won't be able to hold it. And I was like, I want an angle kit. And then I got it, and it was like a game changer.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would you?
With that argument, I was just thinking about this. With that argument, that's like saying that even learning with normal steering, like that's hindering your ability to learn. It's like, okay, so why not? If that's your argument, why not start off with only 10 degrees of steering angle and learning drifting, and then 20 degrees, and then 30? Like it's like. Why does a little bit more steering lock completely hinder your ability to learn how to drift? It doesn't really make much sense with that kind of argument.
Yeah, I mean, I try to back them out in my head, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe they were just saying, like, learn your technique, but
sure.
This was, like, my third time going in, and I was like, okay, like, I think I have enough, and, I don't know, I wanted to get in. Everyone who I talked to at the track who, like, I knew was really good was like, dude, you need angle. Like, it will literally change the game for you. And I did it, and it was unreal.
I think the thing that I've learned, too, is, like, if you know you need something, if you've spent enough time in your car to know that you need something, it's time to get that thing. Like, if you've done a track day in a Miata with stock suspension, and you're like, I actually need suspension to better myself. Some people are going to be like, no, you need to keep driving it so you can outdrive the stock suspension.
Yeah.
Like, no, dude, if you think you need something, then go ahead and just do it. Like, everybody learns at different rates.
It's like what you were saying, and I get this 100%, what I'm about to say. I understand it, but you were saying most people don't build their car, then go track it. They track it a million times and slowly add on pieces over a long duration of time.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing, but I think in the YouTube sense, just because a lot of it's done for content, it's done to keep episodes going. It's more build, then go drive, rather than drive, build, drive, build, drive, build.
There's a lot of channels out there that drift the same car a million times, and they're not popular. The channels that are popular are the people that are always doing stuff with their cars and always kind of doing various things. Like, I don't know. It's kind of.
Well, it's like what you were saying. You were like, you got reamed by your like HPD like community because you were building. You like had sponsors for suspension
exactly.
Before you tracked your car like 5 times or something. Whether even though like we all as a car community know, if I do these mods, my car will be better. And I think people like make the assumption, if my car is better, I'll be better. Which their argument is, no, be better, then make your car better. And there's this whole like different sides. Well, I was raised this way, and this new YouTube community is raised the way where they build it first, then drive it, and it's like this big clash of like true purists, and it gets into this weird like political argument, which is always something in the car community.
It's definitely it's something that's always going to exist, especially. But like,
because I got reamed and I know you did too. But when I built my car farther than most before I even really saw track time, and a lot of people, go, "Oh, you poser! You don't know what you're doing."
But you did
you're
have
building
track time before you did any of that. I think
True, but it wasn't. But in their eyes, it wasn't like I wasn't good enough to upgrade my car.
But then
you know
that's
what I mean?
on them. Like they're just gonna.
Yeah, but it goes back to that debate of like, well, they were raised, raised being like this is how they did it. They were raised in, driving their car stock and getting X amount of good,
right,
and then upgrading and me and I know you and a lot of other YouTubers, and not even YouTubers, but just people in general who are like, I'm going to mod it to this standpoint, then go drive it. It's a different aspect. I think that also is maybe why there was some flack about me, like getting an angle kit before, like I was chaining the track, which is a whole different.
I think the bottom line here is, especially with modding, I think you need to know what you need before you install it.
Okay, but then what if you argue the fact that, what if you bought a car that was, without any experience, you bought a car that, let's say you bought a 240, like right now, with not having as much drift experience as me, you buy a 240 that has an angle kit, has a welded diff, and they go, wow, you bought a 240 that is already, you know what I mean? And it gets into this like, why does it matter type thing.
I mean, it's a tough argument. Like, it can, that might hinder your learning a little bit to have a lot of power and a lot of angle at first, but then again, you can also learn faster that way. But it's like also, the way I'm seeing it is like, don't put a bunch of arrows. If you're planning on like tracking your car, you really plan on, if you want to learn how to drive, like don't start doing aero mods and all these suspension mods that you don't really like, you think that you need but you don't actually need. Like that can really hurt you. I was kind of guilty of that in my Subaru. Like I still did everything pretty well, but there's a lot of stuff I didn't need to do, and I think I should have done a lot more driving before I did some of that stuff. But it's also really different in the track world than it is the drifting world in a way, because like that you're eventually going to need an angle kit.
Yeah, which is why I was just like, let's upgrade it now. I know I'm going to need it. Let's just do it now, which, and I get it, is backwards. Most people don't or can't afford to build their car, that far, which is like, well, no one else does it. Why are you doing it? Why do you think you're so good that you need that? And then it comes across as like, being seen as like, really, like you're a poser. You're making your car.
My voice cracked.
Really so, but from my personal experience, go and drive your car once or twice, sure, with the with just the basics being like a working handbrake and a welded diff. But from my experience, I'm not saying that's anything crazy good, but just from my experience, you really can't slide your car as well as you want to without an angle kit, welded diff, and a pretty properly working e-brake. I mean, and like a suspension. But my biggest thing was welded diff and angle. I think are the two most important mods that you need. And that's from my experience. An F1 driver might tell you something completely different, and that's fine. But in my opinion, that was like huge. Because when I got my angle kit, I was like, that was the first video where everyone was like, oh my God, you improved. That was the first video where instead of people just talking shit, they were like, damn, like, that was good. You really improved. And I'm like, I had it the whole time. I just didn't have the angle to drive my car that way.
Yeah.
And it's not hard. I'm not saying I'm a great driver because I'm not. It's just my car is now able to do that. And I think a lot of people go out there and get discouraged. And it's like, if your car was set up the right way, you'd be so good. The first car I drove was a S13 that was welded diff, had good boost and angle kit. And damn, dude, my first time I felt like Superman. Because I was like, wow, this is so easy.
Yeah.
And then I drove my 350, which I didn't have anything. And I was like, oh my God, I'm really bad. And it's literally how your car is set up, which goes for almost any other driving, type of driving there is. Like you were saying, track versus drifting versus, I don't know, rally. It's just the way your car is set up, which I think is a big...
Experience is a big factor, though.
No, absolutely. I'm not saying build your car and you'll be perfect, but that is a big play in it, I think.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Sure, Evan's mic's getting the same amount of volume.
It does. It just shows up faint. Okay. Yeah, it's annoying.
Just making sure.
Yeah, it's good.
See, look, yours is that bottom, mine's the top.
Yeah.
But that's why I have yours on overdrive too.
Should I just just get really close to the mic?
No, you're good. It looks a little weird, but but the drift scene, when I went into it, was really intimidating.
The people are really intimidating. It's because I don't know exactly. Like, we obviously have different experiences in the world, but I think it was like people, especially who are. There's a lot of people that are going to be really good in the scene that are going to like be willing to help, but there's also always going to be people that are unwilling to help and that want to rag on you for not doing it their way. There's going to be people that are quote unquote purists that don't enjoy the way you do things and that won't help you, and the only thing that they're going to do is rag on you. There's going to be it's intimidating for a lot of different reasons, but I think one of my biggest things getting into it was the people. And it was funny because like I had my first track day. Like I had so much done to my Subaru, and it was really cool because I really kind of it was nice because I impressed a lot of people with the way I drove, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't really expect you to do that. All you did was mod your car." I'm like, "Dude, okay." At the end of the day, like I know how to drive, and I know why I did all these modifications. But I don't know. I was judged really heavily, even after my first track day, even before my first track day. Like it's the people can be really. I don't know. Find the right people to help you too. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that was my biggest thing is, for everyone who watches the main channel, Zach and Sheldon, those two guys, I literally met them maybe a month ago at a meet. Like that was like I talked to them, and then the next day I went and bought the angle kit because they were like, "Oh, use this. We have it. It's huge." And then I met them just through getting out there and drifting. Now they're are really good friends, and they're friends with our whole entire friends group, and you're seeing a lot in the videos, and it's just that like community. I think for me was like, because I went into it like excited to be there, but I was like, oh, like, and this may be like childish me, but I was like, I'm intimidated. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, I'm going here, like, you know, they're like driver's meeting and all this stuff, and I don't know, I didn't know anybody. And then meeting them, and you know, you guys realize that they're like not as judgmental as you think, and it's almost like a childish thing. For me, it was like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm going to get judged, all this stuff.
No, it's not. That's completely normal.
And
that's completely normal.
The friends that are in there, you know, it's a sense of all helping each other. Someone's car breaks, you do anything to get their car working again. I mean, it's
I was so nervous my first track day, too. It was nerve-wracking. I don't know about you, but I was like, because I had been anticipating it for so long, like I was so excited about it. I felt sick the whole morning until I finally did my first event, and then I was like, oh, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. I was going to say something. I don't know what I was going to say. It was there.
The friends group in which you make is really cool within it too, which is something that I value a lot.
I lost what I was going to say. It was really valuable. It was going to change the podcast.
Damn it, Evan.
I know. Messed up.
I mean, Danny has a lot of autocross experience too, or I mean, I think more than.
I've autocrossed once. Never on my Miata, and I have it turbo now, so go fuck off.
Just kidding. I was going to ask Danny, but I guess now we're not going to ask Danny.
I've gone once.
Okay, never mind. Danny, I'm not going to ask you anymore. But
don't hesitate to get into something. If you're wanting to get into drifting, if you're wanting to get into track days, don't wait for your car to be prepped either. Like, if you have a stock Camry and you want to do autocross, dude, just go do it. If you have a stock S13 or if you have a stock rear-wheel drive something and you want to try drifting, dude, give it a go. It's not that expensive, and I think at the end of the day, seat time is more expensive than mods anyways. Or seat time's more valuable than mods. That's not what I meant to say. So just get out there and do it. And,
it's pretty expensive though.
Oh, absolutely, it is. But I think it's more valuable in terms of how much you pay. I think seat time is one of the most valuable things you can get.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, I'm encouraging these guys out there. Like, if you have a passion to do this or this or this, whatever it is, just go out there and give it a go at least once. Give it a go once and figure it out, and then keep going. Keep going for it.
Yeah, but one thing I didn't anticipate is how expensive it actually is to have a quote-unquote track car, drift car, or even I guess if you were to use your daily. Zach uses his daily, and he's digging himself a huge hole with spending money on his car.
Being out there and seeing what happens, it's like I didn't anticipate all of that.
Yeah, well, it's like expensive. Parts will break every time.
Yeah. You're lucky only your clutch seized or whatever.
Yeah, but even before that, like I got those brand new. I got the angle kit. First time I went out, snapped or bent both of my lower control arms. Need to get an alignment, cracking wheels, paying for tires, mounting the tires, getting them balanced. Paying for track days, paying for your helmet, paying for, there's a lot of things that add up to it that make it really expensive too, which is another big reason that people want to get into it, but they can't afford it, which that's why, I don't know, I wish there was a way to cheapen the sport without, I think if more people got into it.
There's a lot of people that do like street drifting stuff.
Well, then there's that whole game too.
Let's talk about that. You talked about, let's give that a little shot to talk about.
I think that's completely on where you live, and like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think some areas, from my experience, Southern California, really sketchy. I think cops are everywhere. There's no. I mean, again, there's gonna be some spots where you're like, yeah, well, I know a place down the street where no one is. Well, sure, but from all the traveling we do and seeing different car cultures and seeing different communities, I think, we're at LZR and Taylor Ray. When I went out and visited them, I mean, they go street drifting every weekend, and I don't think ever see repercussion of it. And they just go in big like semi truck parking loading dock things, whatever you want to call that, and just rip it. And
sometimes some places have bigger street drifting scenes than actual drifting scenes.
Yeah. And I mean,
weird.
Don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm saying there's no street drifting in Southern California, but it's to my understanding and what I've seen, it's significantly less.
What we mean by street drifting, by the way, is not like drifting on public streets. We're talking about like what he said. I just want to clarify that, just people know that it's like in closed lots.
Yeah, I'm not saying like, oh, it's 5 p.m. traffic and we're just gonna like whip it in and out like intersections. No, I don't think no. But I mean, it's like going around like 1 a.m., midnight or whatever, and just finding the big open lots and, I don't know, drifting, which that's a huge way to cheapen your drift passion, considering you don't need helmet.
You got to be careful, though, considering like where you're driving, because some people that own the property that you're drifting on, like, you got to make sure you have consent or like that they don't care or something like that.
Or just don't get caught. One thing that a lot of people don't realize, they're like, oh, you should just go rip it in like the parking lot really quick. And I'm like, okay, if there's one of the biggest things, and I know this is for California, I guess I can't speak outside of that, but if you leave tire marks and you get caught, that whoever owns that can sue you to repave that lot, to cover up, even if you leave a burnout mark or whatever, you can get sued to pay for that thing brutal, to get repaved, which is very expensive.
Wow.
Yeah, I've had friends who have gotten busted like that, going into like a parking lot of like a plaza or whatever, and they do it just out in the middle, but it's on camera, and they get the license plate, and then a week later, cops come to the door and deliver a sue letter, and they are being sued to repave the lot, even though it's like massive. A little spot. They go to the whole thing.
Maybe street drifting isn't less expensive.
I mean, I guess it depends where you live and what you want to gamble, but it's all different, really. But it's something that you got to be careful with.
It's also a little more dangerous because no people typically don't wear helmets and gloves and all that kind of stuff. So,
sure. I know this was a shorter podcast, but we are pressed on time, and I apologize for that. I promise next week's podcast will be definitely closer to the hour mark, but we have a car to fix. Evan's going to the airport here shortly, and we got to address some broken car stuff from our drifting.
Yep.
If you want to see a topic that we want to discuss later in the future, leave some comments down below of possible topics, and which one gets mad thumbs up, we will discuss that. So whatever you guys want to hear us talk about, we will do. Thank you guys so much for watching the Evan TJ podcast. Calvin, get fucked. We will see you next week on Sunday. We do a podcast every Sunday. So thank you to our sponsors, Tuna Crate. Thank you to our sponsor, Movement Watches, and we will see you next week.